Close your eyes and imagine a year so bleak, so crushingly miserable, that people centuries later still whispered about it in horror. Picture a time when the sun itself seemed to vanish, crops withered, and winter refused to end. Sounds like the start of a grim fairy tale, right? But this isn't fantasy. It's the true story of 536 AD, the year many historians now call the worst year to be alive. Tonight, on History Owl, let's drift gently back to a world shadowed by mysterious darkness, where disaster didn't just strike once, but echoed for years. If you're ready to unravel the secrets of history's most cursed year, settle in and let's begin. The world in 536 was supposed to be recovering from chaos. The great Roman Empire had fallen in the west, but life still went on. Eastern Rome, what we call Byzantium, was rising under Emperor Justinian. In China, dynasties jostled for power. In Central America, the classic Maya were reaching their peak. But beneath the surface, humanity was fragile and interconnected in ways few could see. Then came the darkness. It started, as these things always do, with something no one could control. In the early months of 536, people across Europe, the Middle East, and Asia looked up and saw the sun had changed. It glowed, yes, but not with its usual warmth or color. Instead, it was dim, pale, almost ghostly. Roman historian Procopius wrote, "The sun gave forth its light without brightness, like the moon, during this whole year." Imagine waking up day after day, month after month, and never seeing a blue sky. No golden sunrise. Just a dull, cold haze. The air itself grew chill. Summer never really came. Plants struggled to grow, and what little harvest there was failed to ripen. The cold seeped into homes and bones alike. But what caused this endless twilight? For centuries, the truth was lost. Medieval writers blamed omens, sin, or angry gods. It wasn't until the 20th century, and really only in the last few decades, that historians and scientists began piecing together the puzzle. It turns out, the culprit was likely a volcanic eruption, possibly more than one. Somewhere, a massive volcano exploded, spewing ash high into the stratosphere. Some evidence points to Iceland, others to North America or even Central America. We may never know the precise mountain, but the results were global. Volcanic aerosols drifted around the planet, blocking sunlight and disrupting weather patterns. Tree rings and ice cores from Greenland and Antarctica tell the same story: sudden, dramatic cooling in 536. A second eruption just a few years later, around 540, made things even worse. In fact, between 536 and 550, the Northern Hemisphere suffered the coldest decade in the last 2,300 years. What did this mean for ordinary people? In one word: misery. Imagine you're a farmer in the Byzantine Empire. You count on the spring thaw and summer sun to bring your wheat to harvest. Instead, your fields stay soggy and cold. The grain never ripens. Your family's bread runs out by autumn, and there's nothing to replace it. In Ireland, the annals tell us, a failure of bread lasted for 3 years. In China, snow reportedly fell in August. Famine spread. With crops failing everywhere from Ireland to China, hunger pressed in on every corner of the known world. People ate anything they could find: roots, bark, even, in the worst moments, each other. Malnutrition made everyone more vulnerable to disease, and when the Justinian plague swept through a few years later, millions died. But even in the depths of hardship, people tried to make sense of what was happening. In the city of Constantinople, priests led processions, praying for the return of the sun. In Syria, Bishop John of Ephesus wrote that, "The sun became dark and its darkness lasted for 1.5 years." In Italy, Cassiodorus, a Roman statesman, penned letters to officials, describing how, "the sun seems to have lost its wonted light and appears of a bluish color." Can you imagine how terrifying this would be? Without science, without explanation, the world itself seemed to be ending. Old beliefs and new fears mingled. Was this the apocalypse? Was God angry? Was some cosmic balance disrupted? And yet, as strange as it may sound, the year 536 didn't just bring suffering. It also changed the course of history, sometimes in ways we're only just beginning to understand. Let's look at the Byzantine Empire. Justinian had grand dreams. He wanted to restore Rome's glory, conquer lost lands, and build monuments like the Hagia Sophia. But the darkness and famine of 536 made these dreams much harder. Food shortages strained the empire's resources. The army struggled to feed its soldiers. Rebellions simmered. People's faith in the emperor wavered. In Britain, the so-called Arthurian Dark Age deepened. Archaeology shows a dramatic population decline. Forts were abandoned, villages emptied. Some historians even wonder if the stories of King Arthur, battling against overwhelming darkness, echo folk memories of this time. In Scandinavia, the Norse sagas remember a Fimbulwinter, legendary, endless winter before the end of the world. Is it a coincidence that these tales took shape just after 536? Maybe not. Sometimes, myth and memory are closer than we think. Let's zoom out. Across Eurasia, the Great Silk Road faltered. Trade slowed. The movement of goods, people, and ideas ground almost to a halt. The interconnected world was suddenly isolated, each region left to face famine and disease alone. Meanwhile, in China, the Northern Wei dynasty crumbled under food shortages and rebellion. In the Americas, the great city of Teotihuacan began to decline, and the Maya entered a period of upheaval. The darkness touched every continent. But the story of 536 doesn't end with darkness. What's truly astonishing is how humanity responded. Slowly, new societies adapted. People learned to survive with less. In some places, desperate times spurred innovation. Crop failures forced farmers to experiment with hardier grains. Communities grew closer or splintered as they faced shared hardship. And as the skies finally cleared, a new world began to emerge. In Byzantium, Justinian pressed on, building the Hagia Sophia, which still stands as a symbol of resilience. In Europe, new kingdoms rose from the ashes of old tribes. In the Middle East, the seeds of later empires were sown. But for those who lived through 536, there was no sense of a new era. There was only survival. Day after day, scraping together enough to eat, praying for warmth, hoping that the sun would finally return. We often think of history as a series of wars and kings and great inventions. But sometimes, it's the things we can't control, a volcano on the other side of the world, an invisible veil of ash, that shaped the fate of millions. And what about the question that always comes up? Was 536 really the worst year to be alive? It's a bold claim. After all, the Black Death killed a third of Europe. World wars devastated continents. But there's something uniquely chilling about 536. It wasn't just one region or one people. It was the whole northern world, plunged into a single, shared catastrophe. It's easy to forget that for most of history, life was fragile. A bad harvest could mean starvation. A cold summer could wipe out whole villages. There was no safety net, no modern science to explain the darkness or fix the weather. People turned to faith, to stories, to each other. Even in the archaeological record, you can see the scars. Tree rings from ancient oaks and sequoias show stunted growth. Ice cores capture layers of ash and sulfate, frozen in time. Ancient texts, written in fear and confusion, describe a world gone wrong. Yet, there's something quietly heroic about the people of 536. They endured, not because they understood, but because they had no choice. They faced the unknown night after night, and somehow, life went on. Let's pause here. If you're lying in bed, listening to the story of the year the sun disappeared, maybe you're wondering, how close did humanity come to collapse? What if the darkness had lasted longer? What if the world had never recovered? These are the kinds of questions that keep historians awake at night. But they're also reminders of how precarious civilization really is. We live in a world of lights and warmth and plenty, but just a few centuries ago, everything could change in a single season. And here's another twist. Scientists only really cracked the mystery of 536 in the last few years. For centuries, the year was an odd footnote, a puzzle piece that didn't seem to fit. Only by combining clues from all over the globe, Latin chronicles, Chinese annals, Irish monks, Greenland ice, did the truth emerge. It's a good lesson for all of us. History isn't just about names and dates. It's a living mystery, constantly being rewritten as new evidence comes to light. Just when you think you know the story, another piece of the puzzle appears. So next time you see a gloomy sky, remember the people of 536. Remember that even the darkest year eventually gave way to light. And remember that history, in all its twists and turns, is full of stories waiting to be rediscovered. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into history's worst year, or if you'd like to hear more stories of forgotten catastrophes and unexpected resilience, join our community here at History Owl. Subscribe for more tales from the shadows of the past, and let's keep searching for the hidden truths that shape our world. Sleep well, and never take sunrise for granted.